So, let's talk about something we've all felt. That moment you have this huge, brilliant plan, and then you do absolutely nothing about it. Today, we're going to break down the neuroscience behind this. What's really going on inside your brain when you procrastinate?
You know the feeling, right? You get this amazing idea, a project you're genuinely pumped about. You map it all out, you feel that rush of motivation, and then, somehow, days turn into weeks, and that big dream, it's still just an idea sitting on a shelf.
Okay, first things first, we have to get this straight. This is not happening because you're lazy or undisciplined. That guilt you feel is totally real, but the cause isn't some lack of willpower. Nope, it's way deeper and, honestly, much more biological than that. What you're actually dealing with is a literal habit loop that's been wired into your brain. It's a cycle that reinforces itself every single time you put something off. So here's the key. If you want to beat procrastination, you first have to understand the habit that's running the show.
All right, let's start with the diagnosis. We're going to look at the exact mechanism your brain is using to create something called the avoidance loop. And this quote from researcher Tim Pickle just hits the nail on the head. After decades of studying this, he basically concluded that we're not struggling to manage our calendars, we're struggling to manage our feelings about the stuff on our calendars. It's an emotional thing.
So how does this loop actually work? Well, it's a chain reaction. Step 1, you think about a tough task, and your brain immediately serves up a nasty emotion, anxiety, maybe some self-doubt, or just pure overwhelm. Step 2, your brain hates feeling bad, so it immediately starts looking for an escape hatch. Step 3, you do something else, anything else. You scroll on your phone, you clean the kitchen, whatever. Step 4, you get this instant hit of relief. And here's the kicker. Step 5, that feeling of relief acts as a reward, which trains your brain to do the exact same thing next time. It becomes this automatic, reinforced habit.
You can actually picture this as a battle happening inside your head. On one side, you've got your amygdala. That's your brain's ancient primitive alarm system. It sees a challenging task as a threat and just starts screaming, danger, avoid, run. But on the other side, you've got your cortex, the logical, planning part of your brain that knows the task is actually important. Well, procrastination is what happens when that screaming alarm system wins the tug of war.
And this event has a name. It's called an amygdala hijack. It's when your emotional, threat-detecting brain literally takes over and shuts down your logical, goal-setting brain. Every time you procrastinate, you're just making that hijack pathway stronger, turning it into your brain's default response.
So, if avoidance is the diagnosis, what are the symptoms? Well, our brains are pretty sneaky. To get around the guilt that comes with doing nothing, the brain has these clever ways of disguising avoidance as something useful. Let's look at how it hides in plain sight. So research shows procrastination usually hides behind too many masks. The first one is perfectionism, that fear that your work just won't be good enough, which completely paralyzes you from even getting started. But the second one, and this one is maybe the sneakiest of all, is something called productive procrastination.
Does any of this sound familiar? I mean, you're not just sitting on the couch, right? You're busy. But you're busy doing safer, lower-stakes tasks. Your brain swaps the real, scary task for something that still gives you a little check mark, a feeling of accomplishment, but without any of the risk. You feel like you're making progress, but that big, important task hasn't moved an inch.
Okay, so that's the problem. It's a powerful, self-reinforcing brain loop. So how in the world do you break it? Let's get to the prescription.
You know, after all that complex neuroscience, the answer is it's almost absurdly simple. You just have to start. That's it. The goal isn't to finish it, not to do it perfectly, but simply to begin for just 5 or 10 minutes.
Here's how to actually do that in 2 really practical steps. First, the moment you catch yourself avoiding something, just pause and then name the emotion you're feeling. Literally say to yourself, okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed about this, or I'm anxious this won't be good enough. Just naming it helps shift control from your emotional amygdala back to your rational cortex. Step 2, make the task stupidly small. Break it down into the tiniest, most ridiculously easy first action you can think of.
So the goal isn't to write a 10-page essay, it's just to open a document and write 1 paragraph. You don't have to crush an hour-long workout, you just have to put on your shoes and walk out the door. You're lowering the stakes so much that your amygdala doesn't even see it as a threat anymore. It's too small to be scary. So why is this simple trick of just starting so ridiculously effective against such a powerful neurological habit? Well, that brings us to the prognosis, the science of why this actually works. This is fascinating. There was a study that tracked students leading up to a big deadline.
And what they found was that once the deadline forced them to finally get started, over 95% of them said the task wasn't nearly as bad as they had built it up to be in their minds. Almost all of them wished they'd just started sooner.
And this right here is probably the most important takeaway of this entire explainer. The dread of starting is almost always worse than the reality of doing the work. You aren't fighting the task itself, you are fighting a phantom. You're fighting the negative feeling you predict you're going to have. And it turns out, your brain is almost always wrong about how bad it will be.
See, by starting small, you prove to your brain that its fear was completely overblown, and that starts to weaken the avoidance loop for next time. So I'll just leave you with this question to act on, like right now. What is one tiny, non-threatening, stupidly small action you can take in the next 10 minutes to move forward on that thing you've been putting off?